What would you say if a cop asked you to pop your trunk right now? If you say yes, you can hand them your whole case in seconds. One friendly answer can turn a warning into handcuffs before you even understand what happened. Hit subscribe right now because what I'm about to show you could protect your freedom when your nerves are shaking. Like this video too, so you can find it again fast if you ever need these words on the side of the road, because you need to know what comes next. You need to know the one sentence that blocks a so-called friendly request. You need to know when a stop should end. You need to know what to say if an officer tells you to step out, and you need to know how your own words can trap you. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and you would be shocked how often drivers talk themselves into bigger problems. Let me show you exactly how this works in real life. You will hear the wrong words people use every day. You will hear the right words smart drivers use instead. You will hear the court cases that back it up in plain English, and you will see why a calm 10-second response can save you from hours, months, or even years of pain. Now let's talk about why you need this before you ever hear that trunk question. Most stops start small. Maybe you rolled through a stop sign. Maybe your tag light was out. Maybe you were speeding a little. Then the officer shifts the whole thing with one casual line. Mind if I take a look? That's the trap. Most people have no idea that the stop has now moved from a traffic issue into a fishing trip. Here's the reality. You think you're being polite. The officer hears permission. You think you're helping yourself. The officer now has access to places they could not touch without real legal grounds. And once your trunk opens, you can't unopen it. That's why you need your words ready before the pressure hits. Your brain will freeze if you try making this up in the moment. The first thing you do is refuse consent clearly and calmly. This is your strongest move, and you need it ready in your mouth before the question ever lands. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Word for word, memorize that line. Do not freestyle it. Do not joke around with it. Do not soften it into something weak like, I'd rather you didn't. You need clean words. You need direct words. You need words a camera can hear. Why does this work so well for you? Because consent changes everything. If you say yes, you hand over your protection. If you say no, the officer now needs some other legal reason to go further. That does not mean your line is magic. It does not mean every search stops. But it does mean you did not help create the search. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it draws a bright line. It shows you did not volunteer your rights away. Bad way. Most drivers say, yeah, sure, I don't have anything to hide. Then the search starts, and your own permission gets used against you. Good way. Smart drivers say, officer, I do not consent to any searches. Then the officer has to rely on real legal grounds, not your panic. Here's the reality. Police are trained to make this sound casual. They may smile. They may act like it's routine. They may say, if you've got nothing to hide, it'll only take a second. That line is designed to make you feel guilty for saying no. But saying no is not guilt. This is 100% legal. You are not being rude. You are not picking a fight. You are using a right. That matters because your tone can change the whole energy of the stop. Calm voice, hands visible, no attitude, just the line. Watch what happens when you do this the wrong way. You start explaining yourself. You say you're late for work. You say your cousin borrowed the car. You say there's nothing back there anyway. Now you've given the officer more words, more openings, and more reasons to keep pushing. Watch what happens when you do it the right way. You say the line once, maybe twice if needed. Then you stop filling the silence. That silence protects you more than a long speech ever will. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. The big case here is Schneckloth versus Bustamante. In plain English, that case says police can ask for consent, and if you give it freely, the search can be valid even if they never told you that you could say no. Read that again in your head. They do not have to remind you that you can refuse. That's why your line matters so much. If you do not speak up, your rights do not speak up for you. So burn that line into your memory now. Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Short, calm, clear. That one sentence can protect your whole future. Have you ever felt pressured to say yes just to make the stop end faster? Drop a comment below because I want to know if you think you could actually use that line under pressure. Now let's talk about the second move, because your refusal matters most when you know when the stop should end. After the officer checks your license, registration, and insurance, and after they handle the ticket or warning, you need one clean question ready. You look at the officer and say this: am I being detained or am I free to leave? Those exact words. Keep them simple. Keep them steady. Let me show you exactly why that question matters. A traffic stop is not supposed to last forever. It has a job. The job is the traffic issue. Once that job is done, the officer should not stretch the stop just to go on a treasure hunt. But that happens all the time. The officer hands back your papers, keeps chatting, asks where you're coming from, where you're going, why you seem nervous, who owns the bag in the back, whether you mind waiting for another unit, whether you'll let a dog walk around the car. That whole extra phase is where people get trapped. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. Your calm question forces the moment into the open. Either you're free to go, or the officer is saying you are still being held. That matters a lot later. Bad way. Most drivers say, okay, I guess, and keep standing there answering questions. Then the stop drags on, and the officer gets more time to build suspicion. Good way. Smart drivers say, am I being detained, or am I free to leave? Then the officer has to make a choice, and put that choice on record. This is 100% legal. You are not refusing a lawful order by asking that question. You are asking for clarity. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it changes a vague roadside chat into a clear legal moment. If the officer says you are free to leave, you leave. Calmly. No speeches, no victory lap, no smart comments. If the officer says you are being detained, then you know the stop is still active and you go back to saying less, not more. The case you need here is Rodriguez v. United States. In plain English, the Supreme Court said police cannot stretch a traffic stop longer than needed just to do extra investigation unless they have a real new reason. That means the stop is supposed to be about the stop, not your whole life story, not a random dog sniff just because they feel like it, not 10 extra minutes because you looked nervous. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection once the ticket part is over. And let's be honest, you will feel awkward saying it. Your chest will be tight. Your hands may shake. That does not mean the question is wrong. It means the moment is real. Your job is not to win a roadside debate. Your job is to mark the line. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? Then listen. Then act based on the answer. That one question keeps your stop from melting into an endless investigation. The third move matters when the officer gives you an order instead of a request. Listen closely because this is critical. If the officer tells you to step out of the car, do not argue on the roadside. Do not yank your door shut. Do not say, "You can't make me." That is how a tense stop turns dangerous fast. Your move is simple. You step out calmly, and you protect your rights with your words at the same time. Here's exactly what you say. I will comply. I do not consent to any searches. Word for word. That line does two things for you at once. It shows you are not resisting, and it keeps your refusal on the record. A lot of drivers get this wrong because they think stepping out means they already lost. That is not true. The officer can often order you out during a lawful stop. But stepping out is not the same as consenting to a search. Those are two different things. You need to separate them in your mind. You can obey the order and still protect your position. That is smart. That is calm. That is exactly how you keep control of your side of the encounter. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Why are you doing this?" and refuse to move or start arguing. Then the stop gets hotter, the officer gets more aggressive, and you create a new problem. Good way. Smart drivers say, "I will comply. I do not consent to any searches." Then you obey the order while still protecting your rights. Watch what happens when you use that line. The officer loses the easy story that you were fighting everything. The camera catches you being calm. The camera catches your refusal. The whole moment looks different. That matters because roadside encounters are often judged later by what the video shows. You want your video to show control, not chaos. The case here is Pennsylvania versus Mims. In plain English, the Supreme Court said an officer can order a driver out of the car during a lawful traffic stop for safety reasons. So if you fight that order, you are making your situation worse. But that case does not mean you have to volunteer your trunk, your backpack, or your privacy. It means step out if ordered. Nothing more. Your words handle the rest. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the calmest drivers almost always do better. They do not confuse compliance with surrender. They know the difference. You need to know the difference too. You can comply with a lawful order. You can refuse consent. You can do both in the same sentence. I will comply. I do not consent to any searches. That is clean. That is safe. That is powerful. And there is one more thing you need to hear. The officer may act annoyed after you say it. That does not mean you messed up. It usually means your words worked. Your job is to stay boring. No sarcasm. No speeches about the Constitution. No sudden moves. Just calm repetition if needed. I will comply. I do not consent to any searches. That line keeps you from getting baited into a roadside mistake. Most people already clicked away. If you're still here, you're serious about protecting yourself. Drop a comment saying, "I'm still here," because what comes next may be the part that saves you most. Now let's get to the move that stops you from talking yourself into a disaster. After you give your documents and after you use the lines I gave you, you shut the door on extra questions. You do not fill empty space. You do not start explaining why you're nervous. You do not try to sound extra innocent. Here's exactly what you say. I do not want to answer questions. And if the stop turns into a real criminal accusation, you add, I want a lawyer. Short, calm, nothing else. This part is hard for you because silence feels awkward. You think talking will make you look normal. But talking is where people wreck themselves. You forget details. You guess at times. You mix up names. You try to sound helpful. Then those little mistakes get treated like lies. Your mouth becomes the evidence. That is why your silence matters. Your silence does not make you guilty. Your silence keeps you from feeding the machine. Bad way. Most drivers say, I only had one drink, or that bag isn't mine, or my friend put that there. Then those words become evidence, and the officer now has more angles to push. Good way. Smart drivers say, I do not want to answer questions. Then the officer has a lot less to work with, and you stop digging your own hole. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings, too. The famous case is Miranda versus Arizona. In plain English, the court said you do not have to help police build a case with your own words once things turn serious. And yes, roadside stops can get messy before anyone reads rights. That is why you keep your answer simple early. You are not lying. You are not obstructing. You are choosing not to volunteer information that can hurt you later. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because they know how fast casual talk becomes evidence. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection once the questions stop being about the ticket and start being about suspicion. If you already gave your name, your license, your registration, and your insurance, you have done the basic part. You do not owe a life story after that. And let me make one thing very clear for you. Silence does not mean attitude. You keep your tone respectful. You keep your body still. You keep your hands visible. You do not go mute in some dramatic way. You just use the line. I do not want to answer questions. If needed, repeat it. If the situation becomes an arrest or a clear criminal investigation, then you say, I want a lawyer. After that, stop talking. Really stop. Not mostly. Fully. The bigger point is this. Your goal is not to sound clever. Your goal is to remove risk. Every extra sentence is risk. Every nervous joke is risk. Every explanation is risk. The quiet driver often has the strongest position later. That is not weakness. That is control. If you've made it this far, you're already ahead of almost every driver on the road. Hit that like button now because this next part ties all of it together and shows you exactly how these rules work in real life. So let's lock in the legal picture in plain English because you need more than lines. You need to know why these lines matter. Schneckloth vis Bustamante means your consent can make a search legal, even if no one told you that you could refuse. That is why your first line matters so much. If you do not say no, the law may treat your silence or your nervous yes as permission. Rodriguez versus United States means police cannot drag out your traffic stop just to hunt for more evidence unless they have a real new reason. That is why your second line matters. You are forcing the stop to show whether it is over or still active. Pennsylvania versus Mims means an officer can order you out of the car during a lawful stop. That is why your third line matters. You comply with the order, but you do not hand over consent with it. Here's the reality. These cases do not give you a magic shield. They give you a map. If you follow the map, you keep your position stronger, your video cleaner, and your chance of a bad mistake much lower. Now picture this with your own eyes. You're driving home at night. Your heart jumps when you see lights behind you. You pull over. The officer says you were speeding. You hand over your license, registration, and insurance. So far, fine. Then the officer looks at you and says, you seem nervous. Mind popping the trunk real quick? The wrong way starts right there. You laugh. You say, sure, I've got nothing in there. Then the trunk opens. The officer starts looking through bags. He asks where you were. You start talking fast. You explain too much. He tells you to step out. You argue. Now your stop is a full mess. Now watch the right way. You breathe. You keep your hands visible. You say, officer, I do not consent to any searches. Calm voice. No speech. The officer keeps pushing. He asks again. You repeat it once. Then he finishes the ticket and keeps talking. You say, am I being detained or am I free to leave? If he says you are free, you go. If he says you are detained and orders you out, you step out and say, I will comply. I do not consent to any searches. Then he starts asking about where you were and what's in the bags. You say, I do not want to answer questions. If things turn serious, you ask for a lawyer and stop talking. Bad way. Most drivers say, go ahead, I've got nothing to hide. Then the officer gets access, time, and your words all at once. Good way. Smart drivers say, I do not consent to any searches. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? And I do not want to answer questions. Then you stop giving the officer easy openings. That is the whole difference. Same stop, same road, same officer, different words, different outcome. Your power is not in being loud. Your power is in being prepared. Next video, I'm showing you what to say when an officer claims they smell weed, because that line gets used to justify searches every single day. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it, because that one video could save you from the most common roadside trap of all. So let's make this simple for you. First, never give consent just because the request sounds casual. Second, once the traffic business is done, ask if you are being detained or free to leave. Third, if you are ordered out, comply without giving up consent. Fourth, stop answering extra questions that can be twisted against you later. Former police officers have confirmed this works, and this comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. You do not need a long speech. You need a few clean lines and the discipline to stick to them. Hit subscribe so you catch the weed smell video next. Smash, like if this script just gave you words you didn't have before. And drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay calm, stay ready, stay safe out there.